Welcome to another Kundalini After Dark session. Tonight we're talking all about Kundalini and Kriyas. Kriyas is, of course, a broad term used to describe a variety of spontaneous phenomena that people experience as they go through this process we call Kundalini. So I'm talking about spontaneous movements, spontaneous vocalizations, spontaneous breath work, spontaneous energetic movements within the body, within the system. All of this falls under the umbrella of a kriya. And so we're going to unpack this together today. Maybe you've experienced kriyas. I'm here on the call with 18 people in the Zoom room. We've got a handful tuning in on YouTube as well. So I'm going to share a little bit about kriyas. And then I'm going to open the floor for others to share and relate as well. So if you haven't already, you can say hello in the chat. If you're tuning in on the archive, you can find out how to join the next Kundalini After Dark session by checking out the description or visiting brentspirit.com/afterdark. If you're tuning in on YouTube and Spotify, if you can follow, subscribe, that goes a long way for me. If you could leave a review for the show on Spotify, that also helps a lot. It helps to get the message out, spread awareness about Kundalini so that other people don't think we're so crazy. So let's jump in here and talk about Kundalini and Kriyas. So like I mentioned, Kriyas can be a wide variety of various phenomena. Typically, they arise spontaneously. So many may experience spontaneous movements of the body, maybe shivering, vibrating, jerking, jolting. Sometimes those movements become a little bit more sophisticated, if you will, and they can turn into spontaneous yoga postures. They can also involve spontaneous vocalization. So sometimes people will spontaneously yelp, spontaneously laugh, spontaneously cry. They can involve emotional releases, but they can also involve spontaneous chanting of mantras, spontaneous light language, right? Glossolalia or speaking in tongues. These things can happen as well. They are a form of a kriya. As well, sometimes people experience energetic movement within their body. So nothing externally is manifesting, but internally they're feeling energy rushing up their spine or moving through their legs or their torso, or there's some energetic phenomena happening in the head. These things can also be considered kriyas. So of course, there's a wide spectrum here that falls under the category of kriyas. So today we'll discuss them. I'm curious about others and what type of kriyas they may have experienced, what they have maybe gathered as they observe some of the effects of these kriyas. Of course, kriyas can have certain effects. So sometimes people will have specific kriyas unfold, and afterwards or during, they experience a significant emotional release or some sort of energetic upgrade, if you will, or energetic release. So these things can happen, right? So some kriyas also can be spontaneous mudras with the hands. There's also a specific type of mudra that takes place with the tongue. Kachari mudra, there's various stages of Kachari mudra. So if your tongue has been doing strange things automatically, spontaneously, it's likely a kriya related to your Kundalini process. So when I refer to these kriyas, I've been referring to all of these various phenomena. I'm talking about things that happen spontaneously. So when I say spontaneous, what I mean is that they are happening sort of automatically, organically, naturally, without our conscious input, without our conscious effort or active will to engage in any of these phenomena, right? So similar to the way that our heart beats spontaneously, right? So if we're being chased by a person or an animal, or we're in danger, our heart suddenly starts beating faster, right? To pump our blood faster. We don't think, oh, I'm being chased. It's time for me to start pumping my heart a little bit faster. It just happens spontaneously. The intelligence of our system knows that this is necessary. So in the same way, our breathing will also become maybe, for example, more shallow, more rapid if we're in danger. We're going into fight or flight. So this happens spontaneously, unconsciously. But we can also engage in controlling our breath, right, with effort. So we can breathe deeper. We can hold our breath. We can breathe more shallow, more rapidly at will, right? But at the moment we stop and putting our will onto the breath, it returns back into a more natural, spontaneous pattern. So in the same way, kriyas, you may have heard this idea of kriyas being performed actively with effort in, say, a class like a Kundalini yoga class or kriya yoga. So sometimes they will prescribe specific postures, movements, specific breath work that individuals should actively engage in order to proceed on their spiritual journey. So these are also kriyas. But when we're speaking about kriyas today, generally speaking, we're speaking about spontaneous kriyas that happen automatically. So some people have never even practiced any form of yoga. They don't even necessarily need to know what yoga is. And if they're going through what we would call a Kundalini awakening process, they can begin to go into all sorts of different spontaneous kriyas. They can be engaging in breath work. They can be doing mudras with their hands or sitting or standing or twisting in various yoga postures that we would recognize as known, documented practices or exercises, but the person may not necessarily know it's happening spontaneously because the intelligence of the body, the intelligence of the inner Kundalini knows what to do to facilitate their spiritual development, their healing process. So kriyas, of course, are necessary for our healing, our release of stress, of tension, of karma, of samskaras, of sankaras, of vasanas. These are various terms out of the East, right, that kriyas help us to release all of this conditioning. Some may refer to it as trauma as well. So if you're familiar with the work of Peter Levine, he does a lot of work with somatics when it comes to therapy and healing trauma. And so he describes, for example, some animals, they may be being hunted and they go into fight or flight. And the moment they reach a point of safety, if they're able to escape, they get to safety, they suddenly may shake off all that excess energy, all that excess tension, and then return back to a state of being regulated, calm, peaceful in their nervous system. So that spontaneous shaking that they engage in is a form, you could say, of a kriya. It serves a very similar function to what the Kundalini kriyas are for. So when we begin to shake things off, we're shaking off things from decades ago, lifetimes ago even, that we never had a chance to shake off until we finally come to this point on our path where we're now going through this Kundalini process. So this is what can happen. We shake off stress. We shake it off, essentially. So this can happen, like I said, spontaneously. We can engage in it with will. But of course, engaging in it with effort or will, especially if you're in a really intense Kundalini process, may not be the best thing for you, right? So if it's already happening spontaneously, the way that I like to think about it is that whatever spontaneous phenomena is happening to us as we go through our Kundalini process, it's happening at the perfect time, the perfect frequency, the perfect intensity for us at that moment, because that's our system regulating the clearing process for us. Whereas if we take a particular prescription or a protocol from a book or a guru or a teacher or a guide or a yoga class, that may not be exactly what we need in that moment. And so we can, push our system too hard if we force kriyas to happen, especially when we're in the midst of an already very active, spontaneous Kundalini process. So something to keep in mind. It's not that engaging in these kriyas from a class is bad or wrong. It just may not be for you. It may be for people that are maybe a little bit at an earlier point on their spiritual journey where they don't have active Kundalini already, manifesting this phenomena organically, naturally, right, on its own. So overall, though, some people tend to think that Kundalini, that kriyas are something going wrong, right? Of course, and it's only natural. If you're sitting in your room quietly or you're in bed and suddenly your body starts to shake and jerk and you feel like you need to breathe in a certain way, or you're feeling your pelvic floor being drawn upwards spontaneously and it's being held there, or your neck is bending back and forth, or your eyes are rolling back, or your tongue is moving to the back of your mouth. All of this can happen spontaneously, and you may be quite concerned, naturally so. Of course, this is very unusual phenomena. But fortunately, kriyas are not a mistake. They're not a problem. They're not a symptom of something that needs to be resolved. Kriyas are actually a sign of healing taking place, of energetic releases happening, of our nervous system becoming more acclimated and adjusted to the flow of spiritual energy, of Shakti, of consciousness through the system. So if you're experiencing kriyas, the aim is not to come to a point where you stop them or hold them back or suppress them or find quote unquote stillness, right? So sometimes we have this idea in spirituality that we need to find stillness. We need to be still. And of course, at times this is absolutely necessary. And Kundalini will likely bring you to points of stillness. But at other times, it will make you very dynamic, very expressive. And so if that's what's happening, you can find inner stillness, meaning you're not in a state of resistance. You're just allowing, observing as all of this natural, spontaneous, organic movement is happening on its own through the form of kriyas. So this is something to consider, right? The game isn't to try and calm kriyas down or stop them. Not at all. Not at all. The game is to allow them. And sometimes, of course, this can be challenging because, like I said, they can be confusing, but now we're clearing it up. We know what this is, so we don't have to be concerned anymore about what's happening. We're not possessed by some demon. It doesn't necessarily need to be something going wrong in our body or with our health per se, right? We know what they are. So if we know what they are, then of course, there's another thing to consider is, do we allow them to just happen at any point throughout our day, no matter what's going on around us? Well, some of us are courageous. Some of us are bold. We'll be at work. We'll have a spontaneous kriya, and we'll just let our coworkers know, hey, I'm going through something called Kundalini awakening. This is what happens to me. Deal with it, right? But not all of us are so courageous or open. And so what we can do then is we can say, okay, there is an intelligence in my body called Kundalini Shakti, right? It is infinitely intelligent. It is compassionate. It is understanding. It is empathetic, and it is personal. It's very personal. So we can actually relate with it on a personal level. So this is what people are talking about when they say, I have a personal relationship with God. This is really what we're talking about here. We're cultivating a personal relationship with the Kundalini within. So we can have a dialogue, an inner dialogue through prayer, right? And a prayer can look like almost like a regular conversation where we say, hey, Kundalini, Divine Mother, look, I'm at work. You know, I've got bills to pay. I've got to be here. I can't leave. And it's getting a little awkward and intense when I'm having all of these spontaneous kriyas happening to me at work. So please, let's make a deal. When I get home, I'll go in my room, I'll go in my meditation space, I'll go in my car, and I will let you manifest whatever needs to happen spontaneously in order for me to proceed on my spiritual journey. Right? Any kriyas, any emotional releases, any spontaneous breath work, any bandhas, any mudras, whatever it is. But right now, Divine Mother, please have some empathy for me. This is really intense. Take it easy. And often, I like to refer to her as she responds and says, absolutely, relax. And then you can go about your day. Everything is calm and still, and you look like you're a normal person. And then when you get home, you have to keep your end of the deal. You have to keep your end of the deal. So you go home, you say, okay, well, 1 hour before bed, have your way with me. And then you really, truly go into a state of non-resistance, of surrender, and just observe and allow whatever may happen and unfold. And sometimes nothing happens, and that's okay. You kept your end of the deal. And if Kundalini wants to express herself through you, through the form of kriyas, well, then she can. And if not, then you don't have to worry. You can just remain still. You can meditate. You can relax, whatever it is. As long as we do set aside that time where we can actually afford to go through these kriyas. If we don't, then this is what happens when people begin to have these things happening on the bus or at work, or they're in a meeting, or they're in a restaurant, right? Because they haven't really set apart a specific container, specific time and space to allow this phenomena to unfold. So that's something to consider as well. The Kundalini's understanding. She wants to relate with you. She wants to collaborate with you. She wants to cooperate with you. So she may ask that you engage in some sort of relationship with her, a bit of a negotiation in a sense. Okay. So some may also engage in different breath work, right? Different pranayama practices as they go through Kundalini awakening. So we've heard of breath work, right? Various different breathing patterns that have all different various effects to energize the body, to induce psychedelic states, to clear various energetic channels, to, cultivate heat in the body, to cultivate cold in the body, all of these types of things. There's all these different types of breath work. So this can also begin to happen to you spontaneously as well. And what happens with breath work, sometimes even with the mudras, with bandhas, which are the body locks, right? Like drawing the pelvic floor upwards, drawing the core in. We may find that when we engage in these kriyas, they happen with such precision that we couldn't execute with our mind alone. So you may find that if you're, for example, engaging in like a mula bandha, which is the lock of the root, also known as a kegel, right? The pelvic floor being drawn upwards, flexed, right? You may find that if you were to do this if you were to do this with your willpower, you may be able to hold it to a certain degree for a certain limited amount of time before having to release it and let go. But when it happens to you, if at all, it happens to you spontaneously, you may find that you have incredible, almost superhuman strength where you're able to hold it very, very tightly for a very extended period of time. And this can translate over into your precision with your breath work, your pranayama that's happening spontaneously. You may find that it's happening so smoothly, so evenly, right? Really, really precise, so masterfully. You may find that you're able to engage in beautiful mudras with your hands, and it's happening with such like grace, and it's so refined that you wouldn't be able to do just naturally on your own, right? So this is a sign that what's happening is it's happening not because of the power of your own mind, but something beyond that is orchestrating all of this. And so, in some yoga classes, they may say, okay, engage your Mula Bandha. We'll do a little bit of Uddiyana Bandha, and we'll do this type of Ujjayi breathing. And sure, it may help a little bit, but those type of practice are very surface level in what I've observed compared to the phenomena that happen spontaneously. The Mula Bandha that you do in your Ashtanga yoga class is very different than one that's happening to you spontaneously when you've set aside time and space for Kundalini to move through you, right? So it's very, very different quality of the experience. So these are some things to also consider as well. And so all of these kriyas, they're not just for show, right? They serve, like I said, to release stress, to move energy in the body. But more specifically, some of these kriyas, like the bandhas, right? Drawing the pelvic floor up, drawing the core in, maybe your chin moves down towards your chest. All of this is meant to draw prana upwards, up the spinal column, up towards the third eye, towards the crown, right? So even Kachari Mudra, when the tongue moves back to the top of the mouth behind on the soft palate, it's connecting an energetic channel between the lower half of your body, including your, well, I shouldn't say half, but the lower part of your body from your jaw downwards, and then the top of your head from the roof of your mouth upwards. So the tongue serves as a bridge to allow that energy to flow upwards. So when your eyes spontaneously roll backwards, what they're doing is it's drawing prana backwards and upwards towards the third eye. For example, you may find also that you're spontaneously engaging in breath retention. So sometimes there's a specific type of breath work called kumbhaka. So this is there's two types. You can exhale all of the air and hold it, or you can also inhale a lot of oxygen and hold it. But in either case, it draws energy upwards, draws prana, draws life force upwards, up and into the head. So all these various types of kriyas all serve to draw energy in the upward direction towards God, which of course we experience at the crown, right? So these are some ways that we can also understand what's happening in our system. So when you begin to experience kriyas in your head, I described it when a lot of this stuff was happening to me. I could only describe it as face yoga because my face was doing all sorts of crazy, crazy things. But what I understood was that there was a general theme. It was that all of this was drawing energy upwards, building up that prana, some sort of there's pressure being built up to draw that life force upwards to make some progress up and towards the higher energy centers, like I said, the third eye and the crown, for example. So these are some ways that we can think about kriyas. If you look at yoga, for example, in my view, what we look at when we look at like Western movement-based yoga, those postures didn't just come from nowhere. And I don't think that they were made up by any person's ego mind. I think what happened was people began to go through spontaneous Kundalini awakenings. And as a result, their body began to move into certain postures. And people began to say, oh, look at all these people and what they're doing. They're going to these certain postures. What would happen if I copied them? So then people started to copy those people. And then they began to document those postures. And then, of course, now you can go to a yoga class and go through a sequence of yoga postures. But nobody came up with those with their own mind. They were originally observed happening spontaneously, organically, and people going through this process. So I think that's where we get all these yoga postures really from. Today, of course, there's many variations and modifications and whatnot, but the original postures all had to do with this process, Kundalini, right? So you may find that you can suppress kriyas. It's very possible to suppress them, right? In the same way that you can hold your breath. Your breath your body is trying to breathe organically, spontaneously, and you could suppress it, you could stop it, you could hold it, right? But after a certain point, you can't hold it anymore, and the breathing will continue. So in the same way, you can suppress your kriyas, you can hold them back and stop it, but it may take a lot of willpower. It may be very uncomfortable, but eventually, whatever that kriya that you suppress was trying to do, it's going to try and do it later on, and it may do it later on in a more extreme and intense way. So rather than suppressing, it's better to create a container and find space to allow this to unfold naturally. So you may suppress a kriya and you may think that you've succeeded, right? Some people think this. They think the goal is to try and find stillness, but not necessarily, because eventually that energy is going to bubble up again, and it may bubble up in more extreme ways. So keep this in mind. Keep this in mind. As best as you can, just allow them to flow. Allow them to flow. Over time, generally speaking, in the beginning, we may have kriyas that are very dynamic, maybe a little awkward, maybe a little clunky, maybe a little exaggerated and amplified in a sense. Sometimes they can be a little uncomfortable and painful even. But over time, it seems that the kriyas will become more and more refined, more and more graceful, more and more gentle, less jagged, if you will, and more smooth. And sometimes in some people for certain points, the energy flow within the system can become so refined that it seems almost seamless. It's just flowing nonstop. And it's not so rough. It's much more of a smooth flow. And so in the long term, this is the direction that we're moving in, towards a more smooth flow of this energy through our system. Because after the kriyas have done what they needed to do, then the energy can simply flow, and we can, remain in those high expanded states of consciousness, connected, in a state of oneness, in a state of peace, in a state of safety, in a nervous system feeling relaxed. But of course, from time to time, we may come out of those states and things get a little uncomfortable, and that's okay. That's human as well. Finally, some people don't experience kriyas to the same degree that others do. So this is another thing to keep in mind. You may observe others that are having all sorts of really flashy, crazy phenomena, and you may say, I've never experienced any of that. What's going wrong? Well, nothing is necessarily going wrong. Some people just have much more gradual, gentle awakening processes. They don't have many outward phenomena per se, and that's okay. And that's okay. For others, they may have certain outward phenomena, kriyas, for example, they may be very pleasurable as well. And then at some point, they may stop. And a person may, in some cases, get alarmed. They may say, all of the phenomena has stopped. Have I done something wrong? Am I missing out on something? Have I, shut down this process? Not necessarily so, right? Not necessarily so. Sometimes all of the phenomena can just become very quiet, very calm. And if we have any attachment to it, that attachment is now next in line to be burned up. So we have to practice letting go, practice not using any phenomena to serve our ego, or to identify so much with the process, by saying, I'm somebody going through a very obvious dramatic Kundalini process. Sometimes all of that will go away and you just return almost looking like a normal person, and you have to now make peace with that too. So these are all some things to keep in mind as well. Kriyas can be very exciting. They can be pleasurable. They can also be a little uncomfortable. But in any case, they come and they go. And as they come and go, we just simply surrender to the flow, trusting in that intelligence of the Divine Mother that's flowing through us. So I'll wrap there. I'm going to open the floor up for others to share about their experience of Kriyas. Curious if anybody has any interesting things to share. Maybe you've got some things related to Kundalini that aren't necessarily specifically about Kriyas. We're here for that too. Maybe you'd like to just report some insights, some breakthroughs. Maybe you've got some resources to share. Maybe you want to vent about how challenging this process is. We're here for all of that. It's Kundalini After Dark. You can check out a bunch of links in the description for some free courses. We've got a free Kundalini Fundamentals course. We've got KundaliniAwareness.org, where you can find a directory of licensed mental health professionals with Kundalini awakening experience to support you. All sorts of stuff in the description. Check it all out. Thank you all so much for tuning in today, and let's hear from everybody. So you can type in the chat and relate. I'll read your messages on the call as best as I can, but I'm going to prioritize those with their hands up here, and you can share on audio or video, and we'll see where our conversation goes. So let's hear from Samia.
Thanks, Brent. Hey, family. I hope everybody's okay. Kriyas. Um, I've remembered mine very much so. That's, I think, when I found this community and reached out, my Kriyas were extremely bad about 9 months ago, 9 months to 10 months ago. Originally, I thought I was having seizures from getting off particular medication that I wanted to get off of. And I thought it was a reaction from the medicine. And shortly after, when I found out, I was on this awakening path and they were possibly Kriyas, and then I figured out they were, um, I was scared going through it. And I believe I had a meeting with you way back then, and I kind of talked to you more, and I got more at ease and comfortable, and started watching some videos and doing a little reading. And the less the fear I felt for it, the better the Kriyas got, and then having a space for it. So they would happen at night. And it got to the point where I would shake so much that, I used to call it the Shakti body, because my body got in shape. I got ripped ripped abs. I lost a bunch of weight and I looked very muscular. I was like, okay, well, this is good. But I wasn't sleeping. And when looking back now, um, it was it was it's intelligent was telling me like I was getting off these meds which weren't good for me. And when I would try to take them because I was tapering down, my body would shake more. So as I got off it gradually, the shakes would come, and then they would slow down, slow down, slow down. And then as you spoke about, making deals with it, because I was be at work and I start shaking. I'm like, look, as soon as we leave out of here, I'll make space for you. So it got to the point where as soon as I get to my car, I start shaking the whole time. I didn't shake at work. As soon as I hit the car, I start shaking. So gradually, as long as I made space for it, I did yoga, stretches, even breath work. I would have the spontaneous breath work as well. And then a time passed where, as long as I kept making space for it, as Brent has talked about, it would just happen then. So now I got to the point where I would dance and move, and now because I noticed these kriyas would go to a beat, which I don't know if anybody else experiences, but mine has a rhythm. So I was like, okay. So I started dancing around, and now I'm more into like Reiki dancing and Shaku dancing, and it helped it tremendously because I made space for it and I honored it because I like dancing, and sometimes I put techno on or silly music, and it just started bopping to the beat. So I've come to fall in love with it. So me and my Kriyas have a different whole relationship. I don't Sometimes, if I'm stretching in the morning, it'll shake. Like it kind of reminds me of kind of like a duck when you see a duck shake all the trouble off it real fast. That's what it feels like now. It's like shaking it off me. But for the most part, if you make room for it and make space for it and just fall in love with it, it's not as intense as it was in the beginning. I don't horror it. I just honor it now. Honor it. I move. Sometimes I put some funky music on and like, hey, it's you got control, and my body will move around, and I just make it have a good time and adjust to it very well. But now I notice the intelligence more and more. It will, if I sit still, it will nod my head yes. If I want to answer to something, it would nod my head no. Like I got it trained that way, where we're walking together and I sit still and I'm like, hey, how do you feel about this? It'll strike with this way. And it will nod your head yes or no or whatever else. So if you talk to it and honor it and just love it for what it is, it'll start merging with you and working with you. Now my kriyas are mostly when I'm in meditation. I notice the tongue movement now, like slightly. It just moves on itself. And I'm like, okay, if something wants to come through, it'll come through. I don't fear it anymore, which, like I said in the beginning, it was just all fear based, and I think it made everything more extreme. Now it's just like, hey, it's like my best friend, So the Shakti body, my best friend Kriya, and that's how I'm hanging now. Thanks for letting me share.
Beautiful. Oh, thank you. Thank you. Very, very inspiring, very relatable. Amazing. Amazing. Yeah. See, others are sharing here about dance. Carissa shares Mary Chuton recommends ecstatic dance too. Mary Chuton's got great work about Kundalini. Yeah, I I think even belly dancing maybe originated as a result of this process. I imagine some other forms of dance as well. Maybe let's hear from M. I know M likes to dance.
Hi, yes, I do. I do love to dance. So I just wanted to share. Actually, I thought you were going to take the other two first. So I wasn't really prepared on starting to talk, but I'll try to gather my thoughts. Thank you, Samia, so much for sharing. I just wanted to say also, the first thing that happened to me in my journey was the lock of my throat. And at the time, I didn't know that it was a kriya. So I panicked and I went to emergency and I was pumped with lots of medications and stuff. And that in itself was very traumatic for me. So I think this information to know about all these kriyas is so, so important because if we allow it to happen, it will allow the process to be much easier. After that, I was just bedridden for some time, and for like 1.5 years almost daily, I was like rolling around the floor in my bedroom, just every type of kriya you can think of. I've experienced them. However, I wanted to mention just two interesting types of kriyas that I've not heard many speak about, that I learned about today. I would like to share. There's this book I'm reading, Brent. I've shared it with you as well. It's called The Power Unknown to God. Actually, I've not shared it with you. You saw it on the website that I shared with you. But anyhow, in there's a section about kriyas, and they talk about that sometimes when we close our eyes, we can have mind kriyas, and they come up in form of images. So it would just be very random images of basically anything, like a street, a tree with people around it, or just pictures of inside a house or whatever. And I have this a lot. And apparently it's past life memories that are coming up that are being dealt with. Just random images, but there is some significance to them that needs to be cleared. Another interesting thing that I've never experienced myself, but I would like to mention it too, that was in the book that I've never heard of, is apparently your body, sometimes if you've done like some kind of, you have some kind of karma, and you need to, there's a part of you, I don't really know how to explain this, but there's a part of your body that needs to experience something like being hurt in some type of way because of maybe negative karma, like your leg needs to, break or something like that. Sometimes Kundalini can cause a kriya that will hurt your leg, not break it, not make it anything serious, but just, you'll hit your leg somewhere or something like that. Just to kind of work this this karma up, bring it to the surface so that it can be worked with. So sometimes you can actually hurt yourself, or hurt yourself as a kriya too, which is very interesting. I never heard of that as well. So yes.
Fascinating. Yeah, through synchronicity, I guess, old karma can be triggered to the surface by a new circumstance. Very interesting. I'm curious about your experience of the throat locking. Sati Devi shares here in the chat something very similar. I had a lock of my throat too, and I'm a singer, so that really threw me. What was it like when you're throat locked? What can you describe that a little bit?
Mine?
Yeah.
It started actually with coughing, which is apparently also a kriya. So suddenly, out of nowhere, I just started coughing in a very, very weird type of unusual way. And I just coughed and coughed and coughed continuously for about an hour. And then all of a sudden, there was just a closing of the throat. It's like, it wasn't a very clear lock, it was just almost like it closed up. I don't know how to explain it. It just closed up and I couldn't get air through. It was very, very slight air that went through, making me manage to get to the emergency. I was crying on the way. I thought, okay, that's it. I'm going to die now. But I felt if I calmed down, I could feel that there was slight air coming through. But other than that, it was just closed. So that's how I felt. Yeah.
Fascinating. Thank you for sharing that. I've heard of another kriya that serves to maybe block the throat, which is it's related to Kachari Mudra. I think it may be Kachari Mudra itself. So the tongue goes back. Not only does it connect with the upper regions in our head, but it also blocks the back of the throat from prana, life force from escaping, so that that pressure can build up to facilitate further transformation in the head. So maybe there was something related to that, M. Same goes for Sati Devi here. Red Pill Queen shares here, I've been violently coughing. It feels like clearing. So I feel like being a little empathetic to those who may be listening, saying these people are a bunch of nuts because everything now is a kriya, right? You bang your leg, that's a kriya. Your throat gets locked, that's a kriya. Spontaneous singing, kriya. Dancing, kriya. All like, oh, now everything is a kriya. Everything is Kundalini. So I can understand that this is it sounds like, almost like some form of spiritual bypassing, you may say. So with that said, of course, we'll remind everybody that, there's no harm, like there's no harm in visiting the doctor if things are coming up and you're not sure what it is, because we, of course, can have serious illnesses and whatnot arise alongside Kundalini, right? We are humans still. And this is also why the things that I share about how to navigate this process, whether it's all a kriya or none of it is a kriya, it's okay, right? Because we're not trying to force anything. We're just trying to make space and allow whatever's arising, right? So maybe it's a kriya, maybe it's not. Maybe it's Kundalini, maybe it's not. Maybe none of this is real at all, and that's okay, because the things we're sharing are very safe anyway, right? It's not going to ruin your life to spend an hour just allowing and observing whatever arises in your system, right? It's not going to ruin your life to try and relate with the higher power and to surrender to its intelligence. It's not going to ruin your life, right? So that's why I feel that the things that I share are universal in a sense, and I do empathize with those who may be listening and saying, "Yeah, these people are absolutely insane." With that said, I also heard an idea at one point which I liked. It's really hard to describe, so I hope I can articulate in a way that some people can hear me. I heard that all of the manifested world is a kriya. All of this is a giant kriya. So originally there was the stillness of consciousness, right? It's the absolute. And in that stillness, you can think of it like a pool, like a pond. There was a ripple. And that ripple, that vibration began to become more and more sophisticated, right? More and more sophisticated. And that ripple was the original kriya, the original spontaneous movement in that stillness. And then all of that rippling, now it's manifested as everything that we see in our world. It's all consciousness expressing itself dynamically as one giant and never-ending, infinitely complex kriya, if you will. So this is something to consider. Yeah, it is all a kriya, all of it, all of it. So just some perspective there. Thank you, Sati Devi, for relating about that. Very, very interesting experiences. Let's go over here to Colin, and then we'll hear from Galen.
Hi, everyone. How are you?
Hey, Colin.
Yeah, it's interesting. I was going to ask you about this experience I had last week. I was going to ask you about it tomorrow just to see what you thought. But since we're on topic, I was actually test driving a past life regression, if that makes any sense. There was a guided video on YouTube. I was just trying it to see. I'm like, hey, does this one work? Because I wanted to get it for an acquaintance of mine that was curious about it. So I thought I'd give it a test drive. Nothing really behind it, not me wanting to do it, but I've had good luck in the past. So I'm like, hey, what the hell? And I had a really cool experience, it's like it worked. But at one point, I'm not going to tell you the whole story, but at one point, basically in this life, I was this guy named Sam, and this was back in the 20s or 30s. And I guess Sam was a pilot, and I was flying a plane and it was going down. I was in some really turbulent weather, I guess, But I'm sitting here lying on my couch, my head kind of propped up, dog on my side, on my left side. And as this plane was going down, my entire right side, I started like seizuring and having spasms from my head to my toes, my legs, my arms, just like these pretty violent spasms. And I guess they were kriyas, I've never had kriyas that sharp and I've had most of the ones that are more like kind of paralysis. And I never paid. I always went with them, had a pretty good relationship with them. But this was a trip. I mean, the left side of my body, and I know masculine is right and the feminine is left, and my left side was silent, and my right side was just flipping out as this plane in this past life regression was going down. Now, Sam lived. He got through it. And of course, when he pulled out of it, but it was a long descent, they slowly started subsiding. But to the point where it was like they took a while to calm down. It was almost like the right side of my body was in a state of shock. And I was just observing, you know what I mean? But I'm like, the biggest thing that stood out for me was the fact that it was the masculine side of my body. And I'm curious to why you think maybe that was.
Yeah, that's really fascinating, Colin. I don't actually have an answer for you. I don't. I know that for some they will experience phenomena on either side of the body related to the two other major nadis. Of course, I know you know about them, Ida and Pingala. They have to do with the masculine and the feminine. But the solar and the lunar energies within our
Okay.
system and whatnot. But I don't really know what that means for you in that experience. But that sounds really, really interesting. Afterwards, have you noticed any subtle or obvious changes, anything like that?
Um, no. I've been in a better, my vibe's been a lot better since the last full moon, if that's
Mm.
anything, or kind
Mhm.
of sense, more like sense the equinox, which I'm extremely grateful for because I was in a really dark place. And I just think it's funny because I didn't intentionally go, okay, I want to do a past life regression. Like I said, it was literally, I'm like, I was going to give it to an acquaintance, but I'm like, oh, maybe I should test this out. Let's see if this works. And it was a
Mhm.
beautiful past life regression. It was amazing. It was sad. It ended really sad. It started beautifully, but I don't know. It was a trip. I've never like the just how my body just like freaked out, like split down the middle was so bizarre. Like my
Mhm.
dog was sleeping on my, I didn't even disturb him on my left side, but my right side. And because of this whole process, I'm like, I just go with whatever is happening. But yeah, it was a trip. It was a trip.
Very, very interesting.
Anyway,
So
I just wanted to share.
yeah, thank you for sharing. That's really, really incredible. We'll have to see, I guess, over time if there are any noticeable changes or after effects of that clearing. I know that sometimes if there are any experiences any effects that we're meant to experience directly, sometimes it can take some time before we take note of them because it sounds like a pretty major release for you. So thank you. Thank you for sharing. And if you don't mind, you can share the link. Yeah, others are asking for the link to that past life regression.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, and you
Yeah.
know what the funny thing, I did get a message out of it is basically, forgiveness. Like
Mhm.
you got to forgive yourself. I think the guy that life or something, I felt I went into deep shame or something after that because I almost crashed this. And this was back in like the 20s or 30s, so I'm sure it was a pretty scary experience. And I
Yeah.
wonder if he felt like this immense shame because he had this sense of guilt around him. And I just got this
Mm,
message at the end of it just to forgive yourself, you
right.
know. It was a beautiful death and all that kind of stuff. It was really amazing what I could see. But
Mm.
so who knows?
Yeah, I can imagine back then the privilege to fly must have been pretty rare, let alone airplanes and whatnot. So
Yeah.
I can understand
I was a pro, I
why.
guess.
Yeah, great. Well, thank you
I'll
for
I'll
sharing,
I'll
Connor.
I'll find the video for everyone, the past life. You know, it's a cheesy past life regression video, but it works.
Cool.
It works.
Thank you.
I'll hunt it down right now.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thanks,
Let's go
everyone.
over. Let's go over and hear from Galen.
Hi, everyone.
Hey.
Hey, I've had a lot of experience with Kriyas, and I only like it was a certain podcast of yours, Brent, that I listened to where I was like, oh, that's what Kriya is. Like, I've experienced that so many times. But then I've still um I don't know, I've still every time I look it up, I'm like, wait, no, that's not what I'm experiencing. And then it was just again tonight where I was like, no, 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 this is what I've been experiencing. And for the longest time, earlier on in my awakening journey, I was very gravitated towards like energy work and healing of that sort. I became a Reiki master. So I had an understanding of like a somatic energetic release happening in certain ways. And for me, I would just like write off what I was experiencing. I was like, oh, that's just a huge energetic release of like body convulsions and like different things. Cause you do see that like in energy work sometimes in different ways. And I was like, okay, so these are just like huge releases and I'll just label it as that. But for the longest time, I would be like, oh, just another round of like body convulsions or like crazy, insane shivers or whatever it may be, like so many different levels of extremes. And um, I've had it happen a lot of times, but I wanted to mention a few of the extremes that have happened to me. First of all, to just have a space to share them with, because I haven't really shared them in this type of setting before, but also, I think it's really cool because I believe that they also show like just how intelligent this energy is. And it's like, I think it's really cool. And I was sitting here and I was thinking of like different ones that I could share. And I was like, how I like based off of what I've experienced, like how can I even like say that I've experienced that? That's wild. This whole journey is just absolutely crazy. Um, but well, it's not crazy, but it seems that way at times. But yeah, I mean, back when they had first started, it would happen all the time. And like, I'm really keen on understanding and recognizing like what the trigger was for it to come on. And I've had multiple experiences where like I've recognized and observed the trigger, and then it'll be like upwards to like an hour later where I'll then, and this is kind of off of what you mentioned earlier today too, where like it will wait until the second that I open my apartment door. And I didn't even necessarily in those moments like request that to happen. It just naturally would happen that way. The minute I open my apartment door, it just starts like crazy to the point that I'm like, okay, wait, just wait until I lay down in bed because it'll get so intense that I'm like, okay. And that I thought was like the coolest thing when that first happened. I also want to say that just hearing about everyone else's experiences, um, I'm experiencing like a very less extreme version of it right now. I'm like literally kind of shaking and like I've had chills. And I noticed when it happened too, I was like, this isn't just cold because it specifically is chills across my chest and nowhere else in my body. Since everyone started talking, and I was like, okay, I'm raising my hand. I know that I'm sharing. So I was like, Kundalini, like it's not gonna be something where I'm gonna lead to like major body convulsions, but like it's basically at like the level of like most functioning, which is really interesting in itself to observe right now because I haven't experienced that before. And I'm like, all right, let's just talk through it. But so some of the experiences, one of them And they're all pretty extreme, but it's like it's so specific, and it's so like just being around that energy and having those specific events happen is like what brought them on. And like it took advantage of like just such perfectly opportune moments. I had an experience where I was spontaneously experiencing different like past life regressions. And which is interesting because Colin just shared about that too, but specifically death. And I was like being like guided through it, I guess clairaudiently. And I'm just giving summarized versions of everything too. But it was like me and a partner, and it was very, very clear. It was like, your partner is dying, but like you will survive this. Like you will survive this. And it felt like it was happening in real life. And it was the scariest thing ever. I literally was like sitting there and I was like praying, like, please let me survive this. Like my heart was like, is so weak. And every time I experience that or experience really intense kriyas, I always end up in the bathtub. It is like number one thing that just like calms my system, helps insanely to release more energy. Something about the water and like, being in the womb, and even that in itself, like the past life death and then ending up in the water and like rebirthing from that in a sense, like it's really cool. But anytime it's something really intense, I always end up in the bathtub. And I was in the bathtub, and like I literally reached out to my dad, who is a doctor or was a doctor before he passed recently, and asked him to come to my apartment because I was like, I literally felt like I was dying, and like my heart was it felt so weak, and I was so afraid. And one thing led to another where we ended up going to the ER. And I'm in the ER and I'm explaining this, and they're like, oh, she's crazy. Like she's psychotic. And they did a lot of tests. They gave me a lot of drugs. They told me that everything in my system was like perfectly fine. And I was like, all right, of course it is. And I was like, I don't want to be alone. And I was talking about, the experience I had before then. And basically, I ended up locked up in a psych ward, which in itself was traumatizing and crazy. And our mental health system is just so messed up. Like between the hospital and this psychiatric ward where like physical mental health, where like they're meant to be helping it was just like drugs, like suppression, like we don't have time for you, like money. And I was like, oh my God, this is so fucked up. But basically, when I was in the psych ward, because I was like advocating for myself so much, I was like, we need nature. I need like a window. I need to go outside. Like I couldn't get access to any of these things, but they gave me like 10 minutes in this fenced yard that was outdoors on the grass. And it was literally at the time of a solar eclipse. And while I'm locked in the psych ward, I go out to the yard and I immediately just lay on the ground, and it's like the most insane body convulsions ever. And the guy, because I had to go out with one of the people who worked there, he was like, what is going on? And I'm like, no, this is normal. I'm just like releasing stuff. Like I need just like the earth, and I'm just gonna do my thing. And it happened for like the entirety of while I was outdoors, and like just being outside, I was able to release all of that energy. Because that really is what it is. And when I explain it to people, I'm kind of like, like in the wild when like animals are going through trauma and they literally shake it off. Like it's like this thing, and you see kids do it and they'll go like this when they're anxious. And I did that all the time when I was a kid, and people were like, oh, so you have ADHD. And it's like, no, I'm actually just self-regulating and like energetically releasing this stuff. So many different things. And another time that it happened, at one point in my journey, I was led to rehab for different things that literally weren't even an issue at that time. It just one thing led to another. And it was really so interesting. But I was at an NA meeting, and it was like the second that I walked into that building, I felt it coming on, and I was like, oh no, I need to go and like be in grass, basically. And it was like the second that I hit the grass and laid down, huge body convulsions just left my whole body. And I had some crystals in my pocket. I like put crystals on my body and different chakras, and I had headphones. I put my headphones in. I just played grounding tones, like healing tones, and I was just breathing through it and letting it happen. And then one of the women came out, and she was like, oh, you're having a panic attack. And they called the cops, and the cops came, and it's still happening while the cops come too. I have to talk to them while I'm like, no, I know it looks like a panic attack. I promise you it's not a panic attack. Like I've experienced panic attacks before. Like this isn't that. But then, I look back and I'm like, all that mental health stuff that I went through, like that, I don't even think that was that either. I think that was an early onset of all of this stuff. And it's not a coincidence. So many people are experiencing anxiety and those types of things in these days. It's all like energetic healing and release and all the above. But yeah, while I was going through that one, I had to talk to the cops and be like, no, do not take me to the hospital. Like, I'm not doing that again. And that gave me an opportunity to heal the past, time that I was there. And it was so many different things. Another experience, this just happened less than a month ago. I was in residency at a Zen Buddhist monastery. And this one was it was like hours long. And it was really interesting. Um, I knew what the trigger was. I knew it was related to my masculine energy. The order of events happening leading up to it, I was like, I know. I took the opportunity to express to like the group that I was with of what I was feeling. And I was like, I need to step out and emotionally release this. I thought I was just going to cry. This was so much more than that. And I laid down on the grass, and like this was like, it was such a huge release. And I was like, I'm so surrendered to this at this point. I feel safe. I want to take this opportunity to like release everything that I possibly can. And it was so long and it was so intense. And I've like never cried or shaked, or like my whole body was just like moving in different ways on the grass that like I just would never have. It was so intense, and there was just waves and waves of things to be let out. And I at one point I was giving myself Reiki during it too, which I haven't done before, and that was really cool. So many different sensations, it was so natural, but also like I was so aware of what was going on, and like being able to experience it from that place where I feel like I was like, at that point too, I understood. I had already attended a few of these too and listened to some of your podcasts, and I was like, okay, yeah, I understand what's going on. Like this is Kundalini. This isn't something to be afraid of. Like, and I can use Reiki healing that I know how to do. It was just really, really cool. And the coolest part too was that while it was happening, one of the monks that was there with us just so happened to be available to sit outside with me, and he just sat there and observed me. He had observed it happening, and he told me at one point, he was like, because I was telling him, I was like, I'm going through a Kundalini awakening, like this, I know this, what's going on, like this is normal, and I'm just going to work through it, and this and that. And he told me, he was like, I've actually experienced some degree of Kundalini myself. He was like, but I have never been able to view it happening to someone else. So like he was like benefiting from just watching it too and understanding. And I felt so, even just with his presence there, I felt like so held and safe between that and like, Gaia with the ground and all these different things. Like it just allowed me to experience it to a whole nother level that was just like wild. But every single time that it's happened, it has been so specific and so like perfect for what I've needed to release and heal and work through. And like, it's so intelligent and it's so perfect and it's just like, it's really cool and it's really intense and exhausting at times. But yeah, thank you for the opportunity to be able to share those experiences. I know I'm like all over the place,
Thank
but I
you.
think that's part of it as well. Just really, really wild experiences.
Wow. Thank you so much, Galen, for sharing. Really fascinating. So many themes there that I know many will listen to and relate with and have some validation. Yeah. So it's conversations like this, like what you share, that others will say, hey, okay, I'm experiencing something similar. I guess it's a known thing. Just like how you didn't necessarily know what it was you were going through until hearing about it. And others can hear too. Really fascinating stuff. The the precision and the orchestration and the intelligence of this process is always just so humbling and yet so hard to comprehend, right? It's like the way everything just comes together so beautifully, like in those multiple experiences you described. It's one thing to think like, okay, there is some sort of energetic process happening within our body, but then it also seems to incorporate our environment, where we find ourselves. Like you just happen to have the perfect time outside during the solar eclipse. Like it arranges everything so perfectly. And that's just like really, really awe-inspiring.
Yeah, very much so. Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm happy that in the Zen context, you were still supported and held, um, and not hit with a stick and said, this is all Makyo. Right.
Yeah, well,
So,
it's funny. I've had like a Reiki healing from my friend before, and she had picked up on a past life of like monastic life. And I was like, I knew that me going there in the first place was going to be like clearing and healing a lot of stuff too. But yeah, so many aspects of that. Um, I was meant to be there for a month and I was there for like 3 days, the amount of time that I was in the psych ward for. Um, and the healing, like the biggest healing part for me was the decision to leave, which I was guided to 100% as well. I knew that I was meant to leave, but I didn't know it was going to be that fast. But even that, like it was just all around every aspect. And it ended up happening a second time when I was there too, which is why I was like, okay, I literally can't do this
mhm.
schedule here, and I'm not meant to, and I recognize that. But the people that were around when they did happen was perfect. The way it happened, just all the above, was just really, really, really like honored to be a part of in a sense. It was cool.
Very cool. Thank you. Thank you for sharing. It reminds me a little bit of my experience on retreat. Um, a few things related to Kriyas. Many, many things were happening to me on this retreat, but I was shaking, like vibrating, visibly for hours on end, while walking, while sitting. It was happening nonstop. But at one point, I stood up and I grabbed like my bottle of water. And the moment I grabbed the bottle and went to drink, all of the vibration just stopped and I became still and I was able to drink. And then I put the bottle down, and the moment I put it down, the vibration started again. And so I began to do this like experiment. I was like, every time I pick up the bottle and go to drink, the vibration would stop. But the moment I put it down, it would start up again. And by trial and error or whatever, I concluded that the intelligence of this was allowing me to drink without vibrating and shaking. But the moment that I didn't need to drink anymore, it would continue vibrating. So that once again shows like it's understanding, it's compassion, it's willing to collaborate with us. Another interesting thing that happened to me. So we've been describing today about surrendering, trusting, allowing, observing. This has been, of course, my message. Well, on this retreat, which was just over the Christmas holidays of this year, 2024, or 2023, whatever. I'm laying in my bed in this retreat center and having the for 5, 6, 7 days straight. It's just a full blown like kriya experience, like very, very intense. And I'm laying in my bed and really, really intense phenomena is happening to me, shaking, vibrating, convulsing, all of that stuff. And I felt scared. I felt unsure of what was happening to me. I felt like like I wanted this to stop. And while I'm having all of these thoughts, I'm having this other thought, which is like, I'm Brent's spirit. I have this podcast and I tell people to allow and surrender and observe and trust. And here I am freaking out. So I relay that to say, hey, look, like I get like some of this stuff is really intense. Even I can go into a state of contraction and get afraid. At times, this is what happens to me. But eventually enough experiences took place that indicated to me that I was totally safe, totally safe. At one point I was working, I mean, it gets pretty out there, but I was working with some particular um, um, spirit guides from a particular tradition, and they were working on me directly in sort of the astral realms or whatever, and all these kriyas and things are happening to me. And I was at one point a little unsure if I could fully trust these spirit guides. And so I invoked Kali. So I relate very closely with Kali. So I invoked Kali and I said, Kali, is this like, do I have the green light to go ahead with this? Like, am I safe really with these guides? And she came in and observed and said, you're doing very well. You're absolutely safe. I'm going to step back now and you're going to work with these guides. And so I just allowed the guides to work on me in whatever way that they were working on me. And so I like I said, I just want to relate and say, though I share this message of allow and observe and relax, I'm not perfect at it myself. I'm still a work in progress, still exploring, and still very much a human here as well. And so if you happen to go into a state of feeling afraid, it's totally okay. It's normal. How can you not? Some of this stuff is really, really intense. So let's see what's going on in the chat here. Thank you all so much for sharing so openly and keeping the conversation going in the chat here. Samia is asking, does anyone see white sparks late at night? When I was walking to the bathroom late at night, I squint and open my eyes and I see lighting sparks in front of me. It's been about 3 weeks. Is this my third eye? I'm seeing these sparks of light in the dark. Anyone else experience this? It's very interesting. Sati Devi shares here. Yes, sparks come and go at night and during meditation. Noemi sees them as well. Hugo shares, I see golden white like shooting stars in my sight at varying times. Very interesting. M shares here as well. She sees sparkles in the darkness very often. Monroe as well. Very interesting. So it seems like there's quite a few people that experience this. I don't know if I've experienced sparkles and whatnot, seeing lights at night. I've closed my eyes and I've seen lights. I've had some visions and things like that, but not like what you're describing here. So it's very interesting. EE shares here, years ago, one day I began to auto thrust my tongue to the roof of my mouth nearly all day for 3 months. Doctor had no explanation and I changed my thyroid medication. Very interesting. Yeah. So speaking to someone else that described this exact phenomena, the tongue just tapping the roof of the mouth nonstop. Yeah. So if related to Kichari Mudra, I'm sure. Mark B shares here, for myself, with the masculine versus feminine energetic movements, it tends to be in alignment with what's going on in your life and or soul group for each person. It's going to be somewhat different, but you can connect the dots. Very interesting. Colin shares here, salt baths are fantastic for calming, grounding, and releasing energies. And me having some kriyas while sitting on the ground right now. Very interesting. Someone's asking here in the chat, I'm not sure if this might be too weird to share here, but has anyone else also had self-pleasuring kriyas? It happens 100% spontaneously without any intent of it happening. My body just does its thing. Sorry if it's too much to share. I'm just curious if others experience this as well. Yeah. And others are describing spontaneous orgasmic experiences. Yeah. Yeah. So there are tantric practices that involve, I guess maybe the word is pressure points, or using the hands to move energy within the body. And of course, that can involve self-pleasuring at times. However, it seems that these experiences are for a different reason than the typical mundane versions of self-pleasuring that we engage in. It's more so to move energy through a tantric process, right? These are where the ideas of tantric sex and whatnot come from. There's even some Taoist practices as well. There's a Chinese practice. I'm familiar with it for men. It involves channeling sexual energy upwards into the head. Sometimes these things can happen spontaneously as well. Very interesting stuff. Very interesting stuff. And of course, this is all welcome here. This is Kundalini After Dark. We're here to talk about these unusual things. Huan Jing Bu Nao. Huan Jing Bu Nao. I'll type it in the chat here. You can do a Google search if you like. But yes, it seems that there are these spontaneous practices that may be very similar to actual known Taoist or tantric practices to sublimate and transmute sexual energy. So, yes. Let's hear from Magdalena.
Hi, everybody. So,
That's okay.
so I had a different kriyas actually. With the kriya, I discovered kriyas. The first kriya I discovered that I had a spontaneous Kundalini awakening, which was quite late in life. I'm 60, and that happened 2 years ago. And well, the first kriyas was just shaking, but then after it was like kind of like a group of singers that were just coming into my body and were singing and drumming. And I can't drum and sing for a shit, but they were doing excellent job. Actually, my partner recorded few of those sessions. Was really spectacular. And then there was different languages, and one of them, somebody told me that was a light language where my body was doing very strange sounds, and my right hand was doing different gestures. And actually, one time I was driving. I live in Canada, in Okanagan. I was driving to Vancouver, and I was driving like 120 an hour. And it happened when I was driving in the car by myself, and I couldn't stop. And my left hand was on the drive on the wheel, and I really panicked. But then I just felt in me, okay, you are taken care of. Someone's gonna be driving for you. Don't you worry. And so for 2 hours, the kriyas were going in the car while I was driving, and the light language was happening, and my right hand was doing all the different movements, and was quite something different. But I have a question for you, because I have a partner for the last 10 years, and lately she was diagnosed with late onset bipolar, and she's in her 60s also. And so we kind of broke up, and now we reconnected. But each time when we are together, like, my kriyas are coming on. So I'm kind of have a feeling that she's going through Kundalini awakening, and she's activating the kriyas in me. Like, what's your thought on that?
It's very interesting. Well, thank you so much for sharing about your experience with the spontaneous kriyas. Once again, revealing the intelligence behind this, right? You're driving, you're doing mudras, light language, and it's really, really fascinating. So, of course, we're not here to discuss any medical advice. We're just a bunch of people on the internet just having a conversation. It seems that, yes, there are certain people who are meant to catalyze one another's awakening process. So being around them can stir up phenomena, can stir up emotions, it can stir up attachments, old karma, these types of things. It can also stir up, very interesting, like we were describing just earlier, interesting tantric sexual phenomena, energetic sexual phenomena. This can all be part of some of our encounters with people. There is a website called Bipolar Awakenings. Bipolarawakenings.com, bipolarawakenings.com. And so there is an author by the name of Sean Blackwell, and his take on, of course, what bipolar disorder is that it's a spiritual awakening process. And so he's done some work in this area, which some may find to be validating, interesting. You can check that out for some more information about this. So you can explore a bit there. It seems that those who find themselves in a meaningful relationship, there is some meaningful spiritual connection between the two people, and your awakening process is connected in some way. Exactly how? Not sure. I'm sure it varies greatly, but we do come together. I mean, everyone that we cross paths with on this journey has something to exchange with us in terms of some karma, some data, some information, some wisdom, or maybe some trigger. So naturally, of course, the person that you've been with in a meaningful relationship will have some significant role on your journey, and you for them as well. So how does that land for you, Magdalena?
Yeah, that actually makes sense. I will check this Bipolar Awakenings and actually give that to my partner to read. So
yeah, that would be some interesting
because I
perspectives.
didn't, like we were separated for 6 months and I didn't had any kriyas returning or nothing, everything was just, perfect. And then as soon as we slept in the same bed, it started. It usually starts in bed for me, so which I'm very grateful for that because it's a safe place right now. So yeah.
So it could also be that on some level you feel safe with her.
Yes, I do.
Perhaps, right. And so just like how Galen was describing earlier, that experience of being witnessed by the monk, just holding space for her and allowing her to go through that process. Perhaps there's some degree of that also going on here, where to be witnessed is also part of feeling safe and seen and allowing us to really surrender into this process, knowing that someone's there with us who's not going to let anything go wrong per se. So maybe there's something like that going on as well. I'm just interpreting, maybe I'm way off, but you'll have to investigate for yourself.
Well, thank you so much for your input.
You're very welcome. Thank you for sharing.
Thanks, guys. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
So let's go over to M then.
So on the topic on the sexual energy or the sexual kriyas, I want to ask because there's another experience that I have that I know other people that also go through this process also experience. And I don't know if this would be considered a kriya or something else. I would like to hear your thoughts on this, Brent. Basically, I have been celibate for the majority of this time that since the process started. Only now lately, as things are kind of balancing out, I'm a little bit more open. But before that, for like 1.5 years, completely 100% celibate. But what I would feel instead is that whenever I would see, for example, the moon, like the beauty of the moon, I would literally orgasm. Or I would see a beautiful painting, I would orgasm. Or when I just felt intense happiness or saw intense beauty, I would orgasm. I would have to hold it back. If I was together with other people, for example, I would even make sounds sometimes. So it was just like a purely sexual experience, but on a different level, obviously, and full body and absolutely wonderful and beautiful. But I don't feel that's a kriya. Or is it? What's your thoughts, Brent?
Very interesting experiences. I like that you describe, it's sexual, but on another level. So it seems that these energetic movements in the body that we may call orgasm can happen on a level that isn't sexual in terms of mundane sexuality. It's spiritual, and it manifests as this pleasurable experience of an orgasm. Shane here relates as well, sharing, last week I had an orgasm in my third eye and also recently experienced in my heart chakra. Has anyone else? Right. And so I imagine I'm just, going to take a guess here, Shane, but I imagine that those orgasms didn't have a mundane sexual flavor to them. Maybe there wasn't a specific, fantasy of being with another person per se. It sort of takes place entirely in the spiritual realm. And so I've had some what we may call orgasm because we don't have a language for it, like an orgasm, but the idea of bodies coming together and rubbing, that was just so far removed from the actual experience I was having. This was totally related to the divine, to God, to consciousness, far, far beyond bodily functions, if you will. So that's the way I can think about it. It sounds like you're having some experiences like that too. I mean, you're seeing artwork and it's triggering something, of an orgasmic uh, quality in you. It could be considered a kriya. I guess it could fall under that umbrella of spontaneous phenomena. Though it seems like these can, in some respects, have a bit of their own category. I think they can be very healing, very rejuvenating, very refreshing, very inspiring as well. These experiences of having these orgasms, like Shane was asking here, has anyone else? I've had some take place in my heart, in my head, and full body orgasm in a sense, very pleasurable, but not of a sexual nature in that way. Like like I said, just completely removed from any of this sort of biological stuff, if you will. So very interesting. So thank you for relating about that, Shayna, as well.
Thanks.
Thank you. Quincy shares here, the most intense ones I had were back in January sitting in my car. And I'm guessing Quincy's talking about kriyas in general here. The neck bending and twisting started, which I was used to at that point, but then my arms and spine started to move, which was new. My hands formed a mudra for the first time, and I started ugly crying. And since that day, my body does not want meat. Very, very interesting. Very interesting. Lots of shifts happening there. At one point, I was vibrating really intensely, and I just asked, I said, like, sorry, no, I was vibrating. I would meditate with my hands clasped together in some way, and I would vibrate like this. Just my hands would be vibrating like crazy. And at one point, I just got a little, I don't know, demanding, if you will. So I said, Ma, Shakti, vibrate something else, like show me something else. And suddenly my entire arm started to just go into this kriya. And so she responded when I asked. So when Quincy shares here that his arms and spine started to move, which was new, it reminded me of that. Very interesting stuff. And Quincy sharing here that his body does not want meat ever since that day. So this is, generally speaking, this is my approach to diet as well, is just to allow the shifts to happen spontaneously, if at all. So clearly it's implied here that Quincy was eating meat and having all of this intense, wonderful phenomena, meaningful phenomena. So eating meat didn't stop his Kundalini process. And then afterwards, spontaneously, he feels like, not eating meat anymore. This is, in my view, the best way to approach it rather than being super militant about it. Though, of course, there's so many different perspectives and, about diet and whatnot. Sati Devi shares here, I got done doing Kundalini yoga at home with a YouTube video and they played a gong at the end and I orgasmed to the rhythm of the gong after writhing to the beat. It's all kriyas to me. Very, very interesting. Yeah, this is the second time somebody has described having their kriyas syncing to the music. Super cool. let's hear from Tom.
Good evening.
Hey, Tom.
Just think about Kriyas. First, when I first received Shakti about 24 years ago, no, 20 years ago, sorry. I had an injury where my cervical spine had been some sort of pinch on a nerve, and my left arm kept writhing, and wouldn't stop, and I had to begin sleeping, either tying my left arm down or lying on my left arm so I could get to sleep, and then it would wake me up because it would start to flail, and it wasn't Kundalini, it was this injury. Went to a neurosurgeon. He said there was nothing they could do. Went to my own doctor first, nothing they could do. So trying to meditate, and my arm keeps interrupting my meditation by hitting myself in the face or just flopping and doing this weird stuff. So suddenly I'm propelled out of bed because I was lying in my bed meditating, and my left arm began to whirlwind like a windmill, like just doing all these weird things and flop, going twisting and turning and pulling and up and down. And it was crazy. And I'm like, okay, well, this is going on. And then it stopped. And with it, also the pinched nerve was relieved. And I haven't had a problem with my neck with that since. So it's interesting how she enables us to do what needs to be done, by doing that. If she'd fix my back, I'd be even happier. But well, maybe not happier, but I'd be happy. Also, I don't know if it's appropriate for me to give information regarding the tantric stuff. Sort of, people have asked about having orgasms and energy, and I know a method that was done to me as well spontaneously, which I learned, and I don't know if I should share it or not in this venue.
It's okay with me. If others would like to take a few minutes to take a break, they're welcome to. But if you would like to share, Tom, we're after dark here. Anything goes, really.
Okay. Okay. So it's a hot summer day, 2004. Really hot summer day. So I'm meditating. Once again, my back is sore, so I lie back, still meditating. And I meditate, suddenly begin to have a vision, so to speak, that I'm sitting in my car in the driver's seat, which is sort of symbolic for my body, and the me here is the ego, and then the other part of me is Shiva Shakti. And the goddess comes up, is exquisitely, insanely a beautiful woman, but unearthly beauty, because there's something that can't be that no human can, an aura or a radiance. And I was going out of the car to bow, and she says, "No, I'm getting in." And so she gets into the car and sits on my thighs, and then she presses both her hands on my second chakra, and all my chakras from there up light up, looking more like yantras than chakras. Yantras are ways to get to where you want to go, where we all want to go. And there are, I guess, 6 entrances, 4 on the sides, 1 on top, and 1 on the bottom, through the bottom. And she asks me, which one do you choose? And I said, I don't know enough about these things. You better choose for me. And she said, all right. And then it disappeared. So I'm meditating again later, and I go into Siddhasana spontaneously. Now, I can't do physical yoga to save my life. Very, very tight joints and very stiff. Anyway, end up with my lying down but also sitting up, my foot against my perineum, and left heel against my perineum, sort of sitting on my heel, and sexual stuff begins to happen. Self-pleasuring, people call it masturbation. and she's doing that, and I'm feeling, and then suddenly I begin to squeeze my anus and pump through the breath, pump energy from my first chakra up through all my chakras to the top of my head, and it goes on and on and on and on for a long, long time. And finally, I have an orgasm, but it comes out the top of my head. And this happened several times. But one time it happened, and it was so forceful that I actually ended up in the state. Oh, when people say they become one with that, well, that's what happened. She brought me right to oneness with whatever there is with that. And I knew that I was everything, and there was nothing to be afraid of. It was all very beautiful. And I stayed there for a while in that incredible state. And then I had a thought. Thought was, hope I could stay here forever. And I came down a notch. And then I thought again, oh no, it's gonna go. I gotta fight to get it back. And came down another notch. And the more I thought and fought, the lower I went. I was back to my normal self. But to tell people, just to let you know, if people seem to be interested in this, the way I did it was Siddhasana with your heel against your perineum, breath pump, energy pump. So you're squeezing your with heel of the perineum, squeeze the anus, and at the same time breathe. So when you squeeze, you breathe in and you pull. Use your imagination, pull energy from the first chakra up, always up, up. I don't want to do it now because I'll freak out, but and keep doing that. And if you're masturbating or self-pleasuring, if you prefer that, at the same time, even better, because it makes it even more stimulating. And just continue that for a while. And but that breath pump is really important. And also at the same time, when you press your chin to your chest, so you're on the up breath, squeeze and pull by compressing your abdomen. You don't want to push your abdomen out. You want to pull it in and squeeze up to here. And then when it gets put the lock on, and it'll just keep doing that and see where it gets you. I don't think there's any harm in it. If you feel uncomfortable doing it as it happens, stop. If you feel comfortable doing it, congratulations. I hope it works for you. I just say it's sort of the same kind of thing that, what's his name? That guy who does all the breathwork stuff, starts with a P, his name.
Wim Hof?
Pardon me?
Is that Wim Hof?
No, yeah, similar to Wim Hof, but the other fellow with a P, P-I-E-R or something. I can't remember his name. Sorry. He does that. That does that pineal gland stuff that he does. I don't know if you know who I mean. Anyhow, yeah, anyone you look it up by checking out pineal gland stimulation. And sorry, not a P. Joe Dispenza. Thank you very much from QG, who just enlightened me on that. Anyhow, yeah, check that out. I don't know if you want more details, I can write them into the in the Facebook site. Anyway, good luck with it. I hope you enjoy it.
Oh, well, thank you so much for sharing so openly, Tom.
You're welcome.
Very, very powerful practices. It seems to be in alignment with what I described earlier. The Huan Jing Bunao, which is the Taoist practice. It seems like also the practices you described are also presented on Advanced Yoga Practices website as well, with the different locks and whatnot, some of the breath work. I don't know if they mention self-pleasuring, though it may be in there. Some of us may find ourselves engaging in this spontaneously and being taught inwardly how to engage in some of these practices. I've experienced being taught inwardly how to do some of these things as well. It's interesting that you mentioned Siddhasana with the heel putting pressure on the perineum, which reminds me is actually what I was intending to share earlier when somebody had described their hands spontaneously moving to these different parts of the body, right? The heel, of course, can go there as well to put pressure there. I think it has something to do with cutting off some blood flow, putting some pressure, which causes a buildup and allows that energy to move rather than outwards and into the world, upwards towards God, where Tom, like you described so beautifully, one experiences yoga, a state of union with the divine, connection with all that is. So as well, Tom, you mentioned that maybe there's no harm in trying these things. I want to push back just a little bit on that. Even the author behind Advanced Yoga Practices says take it easy with these practices. Don't do it too frequently. Don't do it for hours on end. It can really stir up a lot of energy. Instead, take it slow. Do it in short bursts, spread across over months, as opposed to all at once, just in one day, for example. We don't want to stir up too much, and then, you can't sleep, and maybe you're getting a little loopy and spaced out and whatnot. So take it slow and experiment. And the Advanced Yoga Practices website, he lays out like a full protocol that builds on itself. So we begin not first by, doing this whole sexual orgasmic type thing, but just beginning by visualizing breathing with the spine, for example. So these are some more active practices that people can engage in. But for many of us, it's going to happen to us spontaneously. And that's why my stance when offering guidance is to say, hey, we don't even need to force any of this. We can allow it to just unfold naturally on its own. And in time, if we're meant to have some of this happen, we'll be taught inwardly, or we'll be shown very directly through the flow where we can find the next quote unquote instructions for how we can proceed. So maybe some of the things that were shared today feel right for you and you feel like exploring, by all means, but don't feel that you need to, and don't force anything if it doesn't feel right. Yeah. Thank you so much, Tom, for your wisdom. Appreciate it. Thank you. Now, Shane relating as well about these ideas of moving this energy upwards. Let's go over here to Shane here.
Yeah, hi guys. Thank you, Tom. That was fascinating, because I think felt like it gave me some words to articulate what I don't know. And I think I want to sort of say that my own experience with this has also included some sort of healing. And I don't know how. I have a background of sexual abuse. And I feel like when I first woke up or had the Kundalini awakening, it was triggered by somebody that I was actually attracted to. And my experience of that was that quite a lot of sexual energy that I couldn't control, and so I eventually sort of worked out that actually pushing it up would relieve me, and have sort of, and I used the breath by Joe Dispenza to do that, but then realized that I was getting somehow healed in each of my chakras for different things. I feel, and I guess I don't want to say too much about it, but because it might be different for everyone, but I feel healed of quite a lot of sexual abuse that happened to me, some of the shame, some of the rejection, particularly after I experienced that in my heart chakra. I've never experienced it in my crown chakra, but I am curious, and I can't find any information online around others. And I'm doing this kind of blind. I don't have the knowledge that you and Tom have. That's me. Thanks.
Amazing. Thank you for sharing. Yes, this is a very healing energy. And I'm happy to hear that you described, you learned intuitively to draw it upwards, to draw that energy upwards. It can really build up below if we don't have a spiritual outlet. For some, they may draw it upwards through the breath, through visualizations, into the heart. For others, it may be through going into a certain state of consciousness, which automatically draws the energy upwards. So what I mean is, for some, going into a state of consciousness where you're meant to be creative and express through art or through some sort of artistic expression in whatever way, that puts you in a state of consciousness which automatically draws up the necessary prana to fulfill those processes. So having an artistic outlet can help to relieve any buildup of really intense sexual pressure or sexual energy, which can happen as we go through this process. For others, it's moving into devotional states of love, of rapture. This can also draw the energy upwards because we need that life force, that energy, that vitality to put us into those devotional states as well. So I'm happy to hear that you just discovered this spontaneously, Shane. Thank you for relating. There's a book by a Taoist master, Mantak Chia. He's got a book, of course, written for men. It's called The Multi-Orgasmic Man, in which he describes some of these practices we're talking about here, drawing energy upwards, the microcosmic orbit and whatnot. There's also a book that he's written in collaboration with a woman called The Multi-Orgasmic Woman as well. I haven't explored that one, but I'm sure it's very similar information here to do with making use of our sexual energy for spiritual development. And of course, there are some practices to enhance one's sex life as well. Okay, let's go over here to Tom.
It's also, I've read, doing that practice of bringing sexual energy up and transmuting it is the foundation of, or is necessary for later being able to give Shaktipat. So if any of you guys are desirous of having that ability, well, you might get to, you might not. I don't particularly want to give Shaktipat because although it has jumped from me to someone else once, because I guess it liked her, and she had a day of wonderful bliss, but wouldn't meditate, so it died out again. It sort of faded away again, went back to sleep in her. With giving Shaktipat is it's unless you've really gone far and purified yourself, it'll have really it can have very, very ill effects on your body in terms of picking up karma when you're trying to alleviate them. So you pick it up yourself, and you have to then endure it. Swami Muktananda, who I've read about, used to do 1,000 people at a time with Shaktipat in a big, so does Guru Mai. He used to get terrible headaches afterwards because he would pick up all this stuff. It's, yeah. Anyhow, that's another thing about warning about Shaktipat and about playing with fire. Okay.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Tom. Yeah, and just to validate what you're sharing there, the instances where I've been taught inwardly about how to give Shaktipat, it has been in conjunction with spontaneous experiences of that energy moving upwards, that sexual energy being transmuted and sublimated into higher energy centers. So it's absolutely connected and necessary. If we don't have that juice, that vitality, that power, of course we can't transmit it in a sense. So thank you for sharing that. Tracy here relating that she's also had bodily kriyas that are in sync with the music. It's almost as if Shakti is dancing me. Amazing. Yeah. You get to witness the dance and experience the dance too. David shares here, what's humbling is knowing the physical sensors are only capable of picking up less than 1% of information within all energy. Surrendering and trusting in the divine, living, brilliant white light, or opening to the other 99% surely is the ultimate journey of oneness. Beautiful, very poetic. Yes, it's true. There's so much going on here that we're not able to perceive directly. Let's begin to wind down and get some sleep here. This has been a really, really rich conversation. I think some have shared here that it's been one of their favorites. I think this has been one of my favorites as well. Yeah, lots of value. Thank you all for sharing so much, so openly. I'm going to type some links in the chat there that you can check out. You can visit kundaliniawareness.org to can find a directory of licensed mental health professionals with Kundalini experience that you can work with. Maybe your insurance will pay for it. You can get some support on your Kundalini journey. You could submit a story about your Kundalini awakening experiences to kundaliniawareness.org. We've also got some resources, some books listed there, some videos, some other peer support groups if you'd like to connect with others as you navigate your journey. In the description, I've got a bunch of links to a bunch of free things, some courses. If you'd like to meet with me one-on-one, I have a bit of availability for the coming month. You can check out what I have to offer at brentspirit.com. If you'd like, you can join the private Facebook group where we can continue some of these conversations. Tomorrow and most Mondays, 2 p.m. Eastern, I host a Kundalini Q&A meeting on Zoom, a little bit more intimate than Kundalini After Dark. We don't stream live on YouTube. So you can join us and we'll have some fun conversations and support one another. Thank you all for joining. Appreciate you all.